And coming right up, because this is an action-packed show, I'm afraid, today, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an interview with Adam Smith of Pride in the Port fame, and we sat down with him the other day and had a natter about all of this, and we started by asking him, how did he get involved with Pride in the Port, which is next week, Saturday. If you want to come, enjoy.
Well, many towns and cities across the UK have their pride, but Newport doesn't. We have a thriving LGBTQIA+ community, a lesbian, gay, bisexual community in Newport, but no event. So it was a passion and a dream of mine. I brought a team of volunteers together, and with support we created our very first Pride.
Can you tell us some of the highlights from last year's event?
Just seeing people there happy, smiling, dancing, having a good time in a safe environment made the event much more special for me, and it was an emotional day in a good way.
So what effect do you think it had on the wider community?
I think it had an amazing effect. There's a lot of links that were built, especially around faith and religion. We've been approached now this year by St. Julian's Methodist Church, Newport Cathedral. There are barriers between sexuality, identity and religion. So as a result of Pride last year, we're now breaking them barriers down and hopefully bringing two communities closer together that can benefit the community. So it is a huge effect that's having in a positive way. There's a lot of support now as well this year, as last year was our first one, so people were a bit apprehensive, but they seen the success that came from last year. So now they're even more encouraging and more supportive of Pride this year.
Can you give us a rough idea of how many people actually attended last year's event?
A conservative estimate of around 2,500 throughout the day. But then we've also, many of the venues in the evening of the nighttime industry held events within their establishments over the weekend of Pride. So you could say there was about 3,500 people, but I will never know the exact number.
Wow, that's a lot of people. I mean, for a first event, you wouldn't expect a large crowd like that, I don't think. Now, how are plans progressing for this year's event?
They're coming on quite well. We've launched and announced the date for Pride this year, which is Saturday the 2nd of September.
Oh, put that in your diaries, ladies and gentlemen.
100%. Also, another thing to go in your diaries is what we are doing new for this year is we're doing a parade.
Wow.
So we're going to be starting at 11 o'clock at John Frost Square and marching and parading through the city centre to bring more visual representation, and it's more of a way of empowering the community to stand united together and our allies as well, and it also helps bring people into the city that can benefit local businesses and organisations that may not necessarily have that custom of LGBTQIA+ people.
Can you tell us what we can expect this year? Have you got any idea of what will be appearing?
As for who's going to be entertaining us, nothing is confirmed yet, so I cannot, unfortunately, say who's going to be on our stage. However, what I can say is Newport City Radio will be hosting our main stage.
Oh, yes.
So you're coming back for Pride this year?
Oh, yes, we saw it last year and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good, so we expect more again this year. But there will be a range of singers, drag performers, a theatre group I'm in talks with, and potentially bring in one or two of the acts that performed last year back.
Yes.
So that's the stage. We are bringing in a community area as well, which is where we'll be able to promote community groups and community activities. And there will be a community stage as well. What I can confirm on the community stage is that there will be karaoke, just so I can say I performed at Pride.
So if anybody wants to get involved in the Pride thing, how do they go about it, and who should they contact?
They can contact any of the team of Pride in the Port, but they can find our information on our website, which is www.prideintheport.wales. They can find us on social media, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. But we also have a range of engagement activities going on throughout the year, which covers like 55 plus, older LGBT plus people. We've introduced a trans social meetup in Newport. We are looking to support Welsh-speaking LGBTQI plus people, because that's something we've been asked for. We are working with Newport Cathedral to try and launch Faith LGBT Social. And there's many events going on across the city, like Maindy Festival and Forces Day, Big Splash, etc., that we will be at them events.
Wow.
So there's loads going on, and there's loads of ways people can come and get information and get engaged from us.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested, I know me and Deb will definitely be at the Pride this year, because we obviously know where it all began here. But to Deb and I, it was a carnival, party atmosphere. How does that lift the people? Because like any party, you go there to enjoy it, and it's obvious that people who attended Pride really enjoyed that. So the carnival/party atmosphere, everybody was dressed up. Me and Deb actually looked the odd ones out.
No one looks odd ones out at Pride. We can all be as we want and dress as we want, because that's what Pride's about, being open and accepting. Yes, there is that party element of Pride, but it's also that education and that awareness and that space that people can feel comfortable to be themselves without any fear of judgment or prejudice.
Of course.
And that's what we try to aim for when we do Pride events, is that anyone can come, be who you want, and be around people that are open-minded, accepting, and respectful. Because you could not be friends with someone, but as long as you're respectful and you're accepting, it helps to make a nicer and more welcoming environment.
So, unless you've got anything to add to this, Mrs.
Now, I was going to ask about, now Adam, you mentioned about 55 plus. Now, what about people 18 and under?
So, we do, in our community area for this year, we are doing a dedicated youth area, which will be upstairs at the riverfront, which will be organised by the LGBTQI plus youth groups that are in Newport and supported by Newport Youth Service. So there will be a youth area. How that's going to look, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't fit under the category of youth anymore. So the aim is for the youth organisations and youth groups to turn around and tell us what they want at Pride, and then we can work with them to get that at Pride.
So people with disabilities do face issues, but I won't go into that. This is a family show after all. Would they be welcome at Pride?
Absolutely. Any person of any ability or disability is welcome at Pride. We've moved venues this year. Last year we was at Bellevue Park, but we noticed throughout the day that it wasn't an accessible. As much as it is a lovely venue, it isn't accessible. Yeah. So we've had taken into account that, and because of accessibility issues, we've moved now to the riverfront, which is more accessible, and it's quite closer. Well, it's in the city centre, directly opposite the bus station. We're working with Newport Bus as well to try and provide a better service on the event day, and they are one of our sponsors as well for the Pride. And so it's just working around what we got to make it as more welcoming, accepting and accessible as we possibly can.
Come on guys, at Newport Bus, you can do it.
Yes, they can.
So, I think
What?
we've covered just about everything. So, thanks very much for talking to us, Adam. It's
Thank
been
you for
great.
having me.
Well, that was, of course, Adam Smith from Pride in the Port, who is doing some quite amazing things in Newport. And, come on, Newport Bus, you made a promise to us. Ooh, I'm a poet and I didn't know it. Well, next up we have an interview with Jess Morden, the MP for the this side of Newport. And, well, I tell you what, just stick around for this, because right behind this we have got another interview with a gentleman who actually wrote a book. Terry, I'm just making sure I got the name right, Mogford. And he tells the story of his life in security. So you're going to find this lot very interesting. So take it away, Dan. Jess, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. That's very nice to be here, and thank you for having me, Mark and Debs, and it's very nice to be on your programme.
We'd all like to know, how does a day in the life get spent as an MP?
Well, it's depends really, because in term time when Parliament sits, you go up to London on a Monday, and then you come back on a Wednesday night. Quite often I come back on a Thursday when Parliament sits, and therefore you have a kind of life in Parliament, and then you have a life in the constituency. So my home is Newport, and I live in Maindy with my kids and my partner, who's very long suffering. And so when I'm in the constituency, I kind of do different things to when I'm in Westminster. When I'm in Westminster, I have got a few jobs, but I ask questions about things in Newport East. So I've had a debate recently on e-scooters and bikes and their antisocial use, and I go to meetings about things like steel, and we've been at Lamwen this morning, so things that are important to Newport East, and I raise issues there. But when I'm in the constituency, I just try and get out and about as much as possible, meeting as many people as possible, and businesses and local groups like fabulous Newport City Radio, we all love very much, and we see at lots of events over the summer. And so today, I'll give you an example of today. Today, I did a few calls before I went out, and I went to Lamwen Steelworks, which is obviously a major employer in Newport. Had a look round the Zodiac line there, and then went door knocking to ask people their views, really, which I like to do in the summer in the Newport East Labour Party in Langston. Then went up to the office, had a meeting with a local business that's moved in down by the Transporter Bridge about waste management, then did a few calls, and then I'm come to you. And then later on, I should be doing a kind of Zoom call, this is quite a long answer, with Welsh MP colleagues and Mark Drakeford, the First Minister. So that's quite good too. So a busy day.
So, very busy. Now, how did you become involved in politics in the first place?
So I grew up in Cwmbran. I went to Cross Caerleog School, and I was always interested in politics at school. It was the time of the miners' strike, and it was the time of the kind of march for jobs and things like that in the 1980s. So my dad was quite political, and we used to talk a lot of politics at home. And after I'd been away to university, I came back and did a course at Nash College, and the Monmouth by-election was on, which was one of these big by-elections, kind of like we're seeing at the moment, where they really change the kind of the nature of politics in a way, because they're big upsets. And that was a Tory seat, and Hugh Edwards won for Monmouth. I'd helped on the by-election, and I was lucky enough for him to offer me a job, and I started that way working for him in the Monmouth constituency. Then did lots of other things, but that was my start.
Obviously, it was things rubbed your fur up the wrong way. Let's put it that way.
But that's a very good way of putting it. Yes, they said that's a much better way than I've ever put it. They did. You get passionate about things, don't you? And
of course,
you
yes.
understand that because you're working here, and everyone in Newport City Radio is passionate about Newport and promoting Newport in the best light possible. And it's the same with me. I'm passionate about Newport, also passionate about the Labour Party.
There are things, obviously, people complain about here, but there's a lot of history and a lot of things to like when you look under the skin of Newport.
Absolutely. And if you look, like, we're coming up to the time now in the autumn where it's the Chartist Rising Festival, where we celebrate the fact that Newport is the kind of the city of democracy in this country, with the last armed insurrection in our history, and all the kind of cultural events around that in the Westgate and the pubs and the kind of schools and all the work that goes into the march done by volunteers. That's like such a rich history we got here in Newport, both industrial and Roman up at Culleon, and the Chartists. It's really something to shout about, I think. And the ship. Mustn't forget the ship. And the transporter bridge.
And the ship predates, and people, you seem to forget this, it predates the Mary Rose.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic asset. You know, once there's loads of work been done on that over the years, but that's a really big asset for Newport. And it's things maybe you don't think about. Like on the weekend, there was a fantastic Newport Yemeni Festival in Pill, and the Yemeni community have been here for kind of, you know, such a long time to work in the port, really. And we've got such a big, brilliant community there, and listening to some of their stories, their involvement in the Merchant Navy and all that they've brought to Newport is really brilliant, actually. And, you know, living in Maynty, you've got the same things with community, you know, our communities there. It's great. It's a brilliant place to live.
I know. I'm into vehicles, and I love the old buses we had dating back to the 1930s. So that's another story for me. But going back...
Well, on buses, can we do a bit of buses?
Yeah.
Because last week, me and Emma, who's with me from my office, because obviously we have a lovely team in our office, works up in Clarence Place, just above here. We went to Newport Bus, and Newport's got, obviously, you mentioned the history of buses, but also we've got all these fantastic new electric buses in Newport now, and Newport's kind of leading the way in terms of that, and that's great too. One of which was had the as branded up as Pride in Newport, which is another great thing, which is happening on the 2nd of September.
Oh, of course, we're sort of involved in that.
Which one is done up for Pride? Is one of the Enviros in it?
I'll have to look. People are probably wondering, do you have to follow a code of conduct when you're in the House of Parliament or House of Lords?
Well, there are standards. Obviously, when you're selected by your party, there are various kind of checks made on you at that process, and you have to go through kind of various panels to check you're a suitable person to stand. When you're in Parliament, there are obviously kind of standards and principles, the Nolan principles, that we have to follow in the way that we conduct ourselves, really. And there are also lots of rules in the chamber of the House of Commons about what you can and can't do. And quite often, if you get it wrong, the Speaker will tell you off. At Touchwood, I haven't been told off for a bit, but he will leap in and tell people off. But also there are lots of things we can't do, and, you know, there are standards to follow. And if you do something wrong, quite often the standards commissioner, who's a very nice bloke called Daniel Greenberg, who's recently taken over, he will investigate people. And so we've seen lots of cases of that recently. But can I just say that although we've had quite a few of those cases recently, the vast majority of MPs just get on with it and do a really good job, and are out there representing their constituents, you know, cross-party.
I've always wondered, like, when you have to give a speech, do you ever get nervous?
That's a really good question. I think everyone gets a little bit nervous, and I think when you lose your nerves in situations like that, it's not a good thing. I think it's good to keep you on your toes. So Tony Blair used to say that when he was Prime Minister, his kind of scary moments of the month were going to his local party to give an account of what he'd been doing that month, which we all do. I do in the Ringland Labour Club on a Friday every month, and going into PMQs, because it is quite a scary thing. So it depends if it's a debate where there's not many people there or whatever. Quite often you're not, but if it's a big set piece event, yes, you would be. And if you get drawn at PMQs as like a backbencher, obviously the leaders have their bit at the beginning, that's really scary, and you spend quite a few days thinking about what you're going to ask and crafting it in the run up to it, because if you get a little single word wrong, the opposition will howl. You will then be made to look a bit stupid. So yes, it is, you always carry a little bit of nerves, but I think a little bit of nerves is always a good thing, and it helps you to over prepare, which in my book is a good thing.
Because I mean, us as broadcasters, we sort of go in tooled up with a script. We sort of know what we're going to do. That's what we lead the world to believe anyway. But we go in knowing what we're going to be doing. Like, we knew we were going to be interviewing you. We knew that we were going to ditch the political stuff in the dustbin, because you've probably heard enough of that with interviews you do. And we thought, hang on a minute, let's go at a different angle from this. And this is why we thought we'd do this.
I think it's great, and I think I know you've got a bit of a track record of interviewing all kinds of people across the city, and it's a really good way of shining a spotlight on the different roles people have. Because obviously we've got MPs and MSs, but we've also got people in the council doing like a fantastic job running the city in some really interesting roles, and all kinds of wonderful people out there in community groups and organisations who are doing just a great job for us. And it's great to be able to get into a bit of that and see what people are up to.
Now, you go down a corridor. I know I've been lucky enough to go into the House
You
of
should
Commons.
come back again.
It's a frightening place to visit. You go down there, you see all these famous people, and you're talking to them probably like we talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I was there, I'd be thinking, oh my God, that's blah, 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 or this is... I would be, no offence, I'd be there with the autograph book if I had my...
Well, perhaps you should come again and have a look. But because I've been there for quite a long time now, it's, you don't... I think you just get on with it, really, and people are people, and you work quite often. The bits people don't see in Parliament are where you work with opposition MPs on kind of issues that you all agree on. There are lots of issues that we agree that we don't
imagine there
necessarily.
are.
Yeah, there are, and therefore you just get to know people as people and carry on, really. But I've been there a while, so I've seen quite a few people go, come and go.
I mean,
over the years.
There's many comedians take the mick out of, like the PM or whoever, and I've heard some of the jokes myself. I better not go any further than that.
Better stop there.
I mean, it sounds very much like a school sort of environment with the way things are done. It's sort of very regimented.
It is, and of course on a Wednesday when you do PMQs, which is the set piece bit of the week, it is very loud and noisy and it's very raucous, and I think sometimes people I know people looking on from outside will think, gosh, why do they behave that way? And the poor speaker, he does his best to keep control. But there are lots of other times in the week where things are calmer and more considered, and you have probably longer to speak, and you get into things in more depth, which probably look better to people were they watching, which of course you always can, because you can watch Parliament live on either the TV or online, which is worth if you ever fancy watching some of that stuff.
When I visited there, and I was fortunate enough to be allowed into the house, dare I say, when it was much like we are now, live.
Yeah.
And it was the atmosphere. I think they were debating something a little bit nasty, let's put it that way. And you could cut the atmosphere in there with a knife. I won't go into what it was, but as I was stood in the house, one group were to my left and one group were to my right. And I think it was the ones on the left were well defending their actions or whatever it was, you know. If I were to say blue and red, it's a bit like a boxing ring.
And we've had quite a few examples of that, although it was a bit more complicated in terms of who was on which side. But in the Brexit votes, which took place, a few years ago, things got very, very heated, and there were some very close votes, and that was a very kind of turbulent period for us. But there are lots of examples when it's not, actually. It's worth pointing out as well that anybody can visit the House of Commons, and you have to go through security, but can go and get tickets to go and watch Question Time sessions as well. So, we have loads of constituents in Newport East who come up and have a little look around, because you can get free tours and stuff, and then go and sit in the the chamber, or sit up in the visitors' bit of the chamber, and they can watch what's going on, which is great, actually. It's really
Wow.
good.
I mean, when we went there, I actually touched the thing. I
The
think-
mace. The
yeah,
mace
they
that's
let
in
me
front.
up close and personal. And I thought, whoa, I think is it Black Rod that knocks the door
It
in
is
there?
Black Rod, yes. He comes and
And I think that's the thing he uses to...
it is.
How many times has that been used to knock the door, I was wondering?
Golly, that's always happens in the Queen's Speech, and of course, well, King's Speech it will be now.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also from time to time, if MPs want to cause trouble, they can nick the mace and run off with it, which has happened in my, and that means you can't sit, which has happened during my time there. A colleague of mine walked off with it, but there you go, got it back.
Has there ever been pranks involving, like, that thing being lifted off and...
Well, there were a recent example of a colleague of mine who walked off with it, and that means you can't then, it has to be in place for you to sit. So that means you could have to, the speaker gets terribly annoyed and it ends up on the telly. And of course, the same is true with the Senedd too. So in Newport, we've got two fantastic Senedd members in John and Jane, and people can go there, ring John and Jane's offices and arrange to go there and get tickets and watch First Minister's Question Time and meet them and have a
Wow.
chat. So it's good that, everyone's accessible and you can see what's going on and you can experience it for yourself, which can only be a good thing, not least because we're all from
yeah,
the
'cause a
city
few
of
years-
democracy. But it's you must agree, it's a very exciting time for Newport, really, isn't it, at the moment, with the, kind of the developments that are going on. And I think you do a great job getting out and in the community, really, because I quite often see you out at Mainty Festival and things like that. It's a really good time to be in Newport.
So, if people have issues that are rubbing their fur up the wrong way...
I'm going to steal your phrase. That's very good. Well, they're always free to get in touch. So with me and Ruth, who's the neighbour and MP next door in Newport West, we would do things like passports, tax, immigration, benefits, home office, policing, things like that. And John and Jane would cover education, health, bits of transport. We both do a bit of economic development. So there's lots, and then obviously you have a whole lot of layer of councillors who often do a fantastic job for our city, who can do more local issues for you. So it's always worth getting in touch. And if one of us can't help, we can put you in touch with someone who might be able to raise it for you. It's also worth noting as well, I think, that in the next general election, the boundaries are changing. So at the moment, we have a Newport East seat and a Newport West seat, but there are slight changes. So Ruth is standing as a Labour candidate for the area from Old Terrene over to Dufferin up into Newbridge, and I would be standing as the candidate for this side east of the river, where we are today, but also the city centre, Pill, Malpas, Bettis and Cullean, etc., Shaftesbury. So it's that's a little bit of a change coming, which is the same across the country. There are lots of changes coming, but it'll take place at the next
Not more
general
boundary
election.
changes.
Well, this is the boundary change, which has been put off for quite a while, actually. So it's finally taking place now, and there we go.
How far out does your coverage?
At the moment, it's from Caldecott, and that includes Roggett-Undy and Mega, and then the Gwent levels, bits of the Gwent levels, and then obviously Langston, Ringland, Allway, Liswerry, Beechford, St Julian's, Maindy. I think that's it. I think I've mentioned a lot. That's the constituency at the moment, and brilliant constituency it is to represent. It's been a massive privilege representing it for so many years.
We're fast running out of time, so I think we should take the opportunity to thank you for coming in and making us feel at ease of who you are and what you actually do.
Can I just say back, it's been very nice for you to invite me, Mark and Deb, and also Danny, thank you very much for all the work you do. And all the team.
We're a posh show, you see. We don't push our own buttons.
I know, well, and all the team at Newport City Radio, because you've had so many people through on work experience and you do so much to support community events, and it's a brilliant resource for our city to have you here doing this. And we know that because Pride Newport is coming up on the 2nd of September, and I've been seeing you're doing your Pride playlist, and things adding to all that is just brilliant. So thank you for all that you do. It's much appreciated by us.
It's been a great pleasure talking to you. Maybe we'll have others come along.
I think you should. I can give you a list of suggestions of people to have if you ever wish.
Ooh, that would be helpful. Well, good luck with anything that you're getting involved with, and let's hope we're all on the winning side.
Hooray! Yes. Thank you very much, Diolch.
Well, that was Jess, and we'd like to thank you for coming on, Jess. It really was a great interview. Now we have got our the interview with our Mr.
Terry Mogford.
Yeah, and so enjoy this, and we might be back on the other side. Bye. A minute. Terry, can you tell us how you got involved with all of this?
Basically, I got into security chronicling over 25 years ago. I worked on the doors, to be quite honest with you. The reason behind it was I had custody of 2 of my children, and the basic wage that I was getting, where my employer was paying me, was not enough. So I was offered security work Friday, Saturday night, and that's what got me into it over 25 years ago.
So, did you come into security, like many others, they come in from the police service or through the military? Did you?
No, basically, I just when the badges years ago were called door safe, basically. They wasn't as professionally regulated as the SIA badges, which we all are now. But that was my motive at the time, was to earn an extra income, and that was it, really.
In your book, you say you grew up on a large housing estate in South Wales. Would you say that you've seen your fair share of problems on that estate, and did this have a bearing on what you now do?
Yeah, quite possibly. The estate that I lived on, a lot of people didn't have much. It was a normal council estate.
Yeah.
What I did notice was there was more participation with neighbours. They would get involved more and help one another out.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it's totally different to the way things used to be, you know.
It's sort of I'm all right, Jack. Every man for himself now, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I know a lot of people now where my friends have moved into that estate, and the neighbours, there's no sort of harm. They don't speak, they don't know who they are. And when I was younger, this is how it was. I mean, that's how you got by.
So it's crazy when you think you've given your time to protect us from the dangers in society. You get all sorts. I mean, we were amazed that you obviously worked in security in the Crown Courts.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about this?
Well, I'm limited what I can actually say in that respect, because to be quite honest with you, a lot of it is in my book. People live by my book and they'll find out exactly what it entails.
Fair enough, yeah, that's fine.
But I will tell you that we deal with people with problems from all walks of life. Input into that, we have a lot more cases now with people with mental health issues.
Of course.
And believe it or not, the skills that we utilise working in courts and what have you, a lot of them are transferable skills from doing door work.
I thought you had to have specialist, almost police-style training. Is that the case?
No, there's 2 different types of security with the courts. You've got the people, different company that deals with potential defendants. You have where I'm working, I'm the supervisor that deals with who comes through the front door, basically. They deal with if they go down the back stairs, we deal the front door when they come through. And to be honest with you, just interacting with people, because everyone's dealing with their own things from day to day, and just being able, I find, to interact and talk to people. If I can see there's going to be an issue there, we talk to them, we address the problem, nip it in the bud straight away. And 99% of people will react to that in a positive light.
I mean, I'm listening to you, and I know that if I was in a situation like that, I know listening to you and the way you come across to me, and I'm sure Deb would agree, you would obviously put me and Deb, and possibly even Dan, at ease.
Yeah, well, that's the idea, by just talking to someone. And to be quite honest with you, I've always said to my staff and the other people that do this job in security, they do an amazing job all around the world, to be honest with you. Loads of different people, all professional. They're more professional, of course, by the companies today. And it is the next thing, to the best thing you'll ever get. Much more professional than years ago.
Have you ever had any issues that you thought, I could have done that differently?
Yeah, I believe I have. I mean, at the end of the day, it's human nature. We look at something and we think, if I'd have done that, there would have been a different outcome or whatever. But I would say most of the time, with the skill sets that we have and the training that we have on a regular basis, then most of it, we've seen these situations before and we try to alleviate it as quick as possible. A lot of what we use today is called de-escalation tactics, where rather than when I was the first doorman with Door Safe, these particular tactics they wasn't around at that time.
How close are these dramas that portray the likes of your work to reality?
Well, they are close, and you have to remember when people do walk into a court or whatever, some people have never ever been in these places. They either get quite intimidated or they lock themselves in in their own body in respect. They don't want to speak to anyone.
Of course, yeah.
And what we actually do is when we come in, if we see someone of this nature behaving in a strange sort of way, or they don't want to speak, we go over and we speak to them and we say, look, the court, someone's always up there, or listen, if you need any, you need to come back and speak to us. Because you have to remember, we're not just there for security, we're there for the safety of all court users, including staff. But we're also there to administer first aid, because that does happen sometimes,
Oh, yeah, I never thought of that one. I mean, I suppose in your line of work, you might have seen somebody collapse in there.
Yeah.
Have you ever actually been in a situation where you've actually saved a life? I wouldn't be surprised if you have.
We have a defib on site in my office where we're based. Up to now, touch wood, we haven't had to use it. We had one gentleman come into a venue I was working. Down the front of his trousers, he had a hammer, and obviously we took it off him. We seen, see part of the protruding. We took it off him, but if these people are going to bring something in, the impetus is they're going to use it. You have to think on your feet. You have the other on the doors as well. You've got other issues there in respect of not only people with alcohol consumption, they're under influence of something else, narcotic or whatever, and their behaviour is erratic. Then the trouble is they sometimes take it out on you if they're not happy, and if they're behaving in a certain way and it's not appropriate and you stop them, then you're in the firing line straight away. But we have ways of dealing with these situations.
Do you have to almost be able to read people's minds?
Well, to a degree, their behaviour, as I said to you earlier, their behaviour usually sets off. We know if we're going to have an issue with a particular person, the way they behave. And I don't mean if they're violent or kick things or anything like that. You can just tell. Because when I was a doorman, I used to be out on the front with my colleagues. And if you could tell the people who was out for a good night, because they're talking, they're responsive, and they're just out for a good night. 99% of these people, I would say, are like that. I have nothing but respect for them. And then you get the odd one, and you can tell they don't want to talk to you, and you can tell straight away you're going to have an issue. And what I used to say then is, I don't want this particular individual in the club or the pub, because you then have to, if they pick off inside and they start something, there's usually a few more people involved and you've got to get them out. So everything is done from the front door, everything.
How you keep the lid on a situation that could turn seriously ugly is quite amazing.
Yeah, as I say, some cases, some things we've actually gone into and seen are very explosive, and I would say that, many a time I've seen that. As I said, people's behaviour, they do things, they give away signals all the time. In drink, it's more obvious, but when they haven't had a drink, it's not so obvious. As I said, we all have bang up the deeper courses, we go on things to look for these little things all the time, these little signals.
We know that you've written a book. Can you tell us a bit about the project, how you pulled all that together?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, it chronicles over 25 years of working in various mantras of security. And when I put this together, it made me laugh, because there was a woman coming past where I was working this particular time, and she come past the front door I was working, and she said, "Is that all you ever do, just stand on the door?" And I said, "Well, no, this is only a very small part of what we do. There's a lot of other things we take on." So I was explaining to her, and then I thought, you know what, it'd be interesting to give people an insight into different types of security in different venues. I mean, you have to remember, the world we live in is a very different place from 25 years ago.
Obviously, you've seen some major changes in 25 years.
Yeah.
Society, and gotta be careful with politics here, but
I know.
there's certain events, can I put it that way?
Yeah.
That have occurred in various aspects of life
Yeah.
that have possibly had a bearing on this.
Yeah, I mean, some things do. I mean, as I said with the course, is because of everything that comes to light today from the world we live in, which I said is very, very different from 25 years ago and 30 years ago. You have to be very careful where you say how you deal with people, how you search people out. There's so many ramifications if you get things wrong.
Never been insulted by people like yourself.
No.
I mean, I have what they call a double cleft lip and palate, commonly called a hair lip. And the unknowledgeable sometimes insult people with problems like that.
Yeah.
And I know in my lifetime I've had incidents because I do have a prosthetic eye. And I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but I was in a large city in sort of the middle of the country. And I was out at night and my artificial eye, known by the crew here as Nelson, fell out. Well, the police were notified, and the message that they got was that gentleman needs help to find his eye. As in, they thought, oh my God, surely an ambulance needs to be called here. But then the officer came, and I explained about the prosthetic eye, and he had to put in the call. Yeah, I'm dealing, blah, blah, blah. Say again, and then he gave his number. I am helping a gentleman look for his prosthetic eye. He ended up happening to give me the microphone so that I could explain to him. So, having a disability, I'm sure you've met people with disabilities.
Yeah, of course.
You'll probably note that many of us have possibly, some say I have a positive outlook on life. Like Deb. I mean, she's been through some stuff. And, well, she's met some of the kind of people that you thing in the hospital, haven't you, missus? And they've helped us out. I mean,
I'm sure I've seen the odd situation where you've had maybe hospital security having to deal with things.
That's correct, yeah.
And again, you watch them putting the lid on it. It's just, wow, how did they do that? Yeah. It's quite amazing.
Well, everyone is treated, as I say, with impartiality. No one is ever targeted on a thing. And you have to factor in when you say about hospital security, as I said, all security all around the country, all around the world, they do an absolutely incredible job. But with the hospitals, you have to factor in the issues they have at late.
Of course, yeah.
People are intoxicated or under an influence. Some of the people, not obviously all the people, only get the small minority. But it becomes an art in itself, because I know when I was a doorman, being able to speak to people and the influence of alcohol or a narcotic is really an art in itself. It really is.
A bit frustrating, I think I find that.
Yeah, well, you can, the saying, well, you can tell someone 9 and 10 times and it just doesn't resonate at all. And that's when you have to use another course of action then, depending on what they're doing. If they're becoming violent or abusive to someone, then really and truly with venues and all, you have to get them out of that venue. If you don't get them out of there, they not only spoil everyone else's night.
It'll ruin the night for everybody.
It can.
Ruining it for themselves and other people.
Yeah, and it exacerbates them, because if you end up having him fighting with someone else, you've got their friends. And that's why I said, on the front door, the very front door with the doormans, that's where all the work is done in respect of assessing who is right to come in, who you're going to have an issue with, and it's experience.
To me, it's a no thank you, not for me kind of moment, getting involved with it. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Because I think we ought to promote the book.
To be honest with you, I'm Newport boy, born and bred. I am. No, I'm really proud of that fact. When I brought this book out, at the time I brought it out, I thought it would be really nice for people to read this book and see how different mantras the security formulate without giving too much away. But this book, when I first wrote it, it was like 180 pages, and then I thought about it, and I thought, what I'm going to do, I'm going to condense it right down. So if someone's jumping on a train, or they're getting on a bus, or they're going somewhere and they want to read something, that to leave them wanting more, then this is why I wrote the book. The way it was put together, the publisher I got is an amazing publisher. The way it was put together, I've even mentioned my colleagues I work with, not by name, but I mentioned how professional they are with me, and how we work off one another and bounce off one another and work. And when I say bounce, I don't mean physically, just in respect of we're all on the same hymn sheet as if there's an issue coming in. And the good thing is, working in some of the buildings, we're told if there's a potential problem with a certain individual. So I make resources in to deal with that. With me and my staff, But it's a professional job. I don't think it gets a credit sometimes that it's worth, if I'm honest with you. The plaudits is worth, because I've seen men and women all around the country and around the world, and they do an absolutely incredible job. If you didn't have them where we work, can you imagine going into a club or a pub and you've got no security there?
No, thank you, not for me.
No, I mean,
It was good a night start.
Yeah,
Quiet
I mean,
out.
it'd be terrible, it would.
I mean, it's quite amazing. We're hearing this, and obviously you proved, and we've always suspected, that you are actually human.
Yeah. Well, you've got to remember, like I said, I gave you the reason I started. I took that up at the time, and to be honest with you, it is invaluable, the experience that you get. I mean, we have security officers and we have other people come to us, and I always say to them, to be honest, work a month dealing on the doors, work a month and see how different it is to what we're doing now. And it, as I said to you, these transferable skills are what you're going to use all the time. I mean, don't forget, being able to go up to someone you've never ever met before and say, you okay, fella, or you all right out there, or just little things like that makes people feel at ease. Whereas even ways you stand, believe it or not, the ways you hold yourself, if you stand in a certain way, people treat it as a form of aggression, and it's not. And this is why we try to be hands-on with people, in respect of interacting with them more.
Eye contact, and that's something that's always intrigued me and Deb, that mannerisms of how people behave.
Yeah.
And then something like you have 20/20 vision, so you're going to pick up on the slightest
mannerism or whatever.
That's it, yeah. So it's
Possibly having to pick up on where maybe perhaps cameras are there to help you.
Yeah.
Then there's possibly you were then in a blind spot.
That's right. There are times like that happen, and the way it's formulated, my staff this with me, if there's something that I miss by some means, the next one will pick it up and say to me, listen, Terry, I've just noticed something here now when your back was turned or whatever. And this is why you work and you bounce off one another in respect of you're interacting, communication all the time. This job, communication is everything. It's absolutely everything. And we use wired mics and all where I work, purely because I might want to say something to one of my staff, and I might not want someone stood behind him to hear what I'm saying to him, And this is why it's not just security. The old adage was on a gatehouse, where you're booking vehicles in and out. Today, they've replaced a lot of the jobs, courts and other buildings. Many years ago, the police would be doing. So, as I said, you have to have them there, for your own safety.
I suppose that sort of things, we've watched things like Crown Court and various, give our age away, why not? We've watched various shows like set in, I think there's a series called The Bench, that was, funny enough, that was filmed up here, I think.
Yeah, that was filmed down here, wasn't it, The Bench?
Sure, it's done in the Civic.
Yeah, it was, yeah. They've also had in the Civic things like, in the Civic Centre the other side, Casualty and things like that.
Of course, yeah. Me and Deb had a walkthrough on that, so that's a bit of a... That's a few years ago, that was. Now, people have heard that you've written a book. How can they get hold of this book?
They can obtain my book from anywhere, from Waterstones, from Smith's, on Amazon. They can get it basically anywhere. Believe it or not, I was told the other day you can even get it in Poland. Someone was saying to me, I don't know why they were telling me that, but that's what they said to me. They read my book, they'll thoroughly enjoy it, because there's a lot of people that come to our place and speak to us, and they say, like, you want to put that down, write that down, and I always say, well, I have. It's tongue-in-cheek, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of humour in your job. You've got to be able to laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my image of a security man, you have to be possibly a bit thick-skinned.
When is the book being released?
The book has already been released now. It was actually released in November of last year, and it is doing really well. And I'm really happy, because it's just giving people that's never worked in security or anything like that, but they've got an interest in it. It's giving them an insight into it,
It's a two-part question.
Okay.
What is the title of the book?
The book is called Through the Eyes of a Security Operative.
So, I think me and Deb are going to be waddling up to Waterstones to get us a coffee. Thanks for coming in.
That's all right, no problem. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I do appreciate, obviously, being a Newport boy.
Well, that is it from us for this month, but we will be back again. So, we'd like to thank Jess Morden,
Adam Smith,
and, of course,
Terry,
for coming in to talk to us, and we'd like to thank Dan for pressing our buttons.